recording. All right. So once again, we'll just say happy Monday. We're just going to briefly, I'm going to share you guys what was said by Jerome Powell. Don't cheat if you don't know. Listen to me first. And then we'll go into negative interest rates and how crazy that sounds. So Jerome Powell is an interesting character. Obviously, where does he want the economy to go? Where does he want the markets to go?
Upwards.
Upwards, right? What is the job? And let me go to Leslie and Vincent. Stay unmuted because when I say it, I still want your verbal reaction. Leslie, can you tell me what is the purpose of the central bank or the federal chair? What do you think their purpose is?
With negative interest rates?
No. In general, what is the central bank's goal? What is their job?
The Fed, it's to help the economy.
Help it in terms of what? There's really one thing that they're responsible for. Anybody want to help her out? Yes, their job is to help the economy. But define help is kind of
maintain a healthy economy?
Yeah, so it's healthy. Like remember we played the Fed game, guys? You need unemployment and inflation, so you try to balance unemployment and inflation. So their goal is just a positive, slow growth, healthy economy. Okay. In order to maintain that, what are some things the Fed has done? I know you did your project, and since then, actually, things have changed on what the Fed's done. They've done more. Do you guys remember so far, what has the Fed done? So they cut interest rates. We know that.
Money?
Say it again.
They printed a lot of money.
They printed a lot of money. They're buying a lot of debt, right? So like Dylan said, they're buying junk bonds. Like Frank said that he's calling it quantitative easing, which it is, which they haven't coined it this time. But yeah, it is QE, quantitative easing. They're buying junk bonds. Now they're also buying ETFs. So remember, we talked about baskets of stocks. Remember, we talked about the QQQ ETF, right? The one that has like Apple and Facebook and Google and all the tech stocks. Here's the crazy part. They're not going to buy the QQQ because it's a healthy ETF. They're buying junk ETFs. So they're buying bad debt, and they're buying funds that own bad debt. It's crazy. It's crazy. But Jerome Powell said something yesterday, which is mind-blowingly scary as for your age group, because someone's going to have to pay this bill. It's mind-scaringly for my age group because I'm in my 30s. My butt is going to pay this bill. But it's a hell of a time, I guess, if you want to get some stocks. So here's what he said. He did say things like, you can't put into words the pain people feel. Yes, I agree with that. Certain people are definitely feeling it harder than others. But then he went on to say, there is no limit to the amount of money the Fed can print during this crisis. There is no limit to what the Fed is capable of doing.
So we're going to like World War II level Germany printing money, or we're just going to be in
Oh, yeah.
So that's the crazy part. So the crazy part is, like, for me, I heard that, and I know I'm being recorded, and I have to share it, and all this other stuff, so I'm not going to say the word. But I was like, holy blank. There's no way this man just said this on national television, that there's no limit to what the Fed will do or money they'll print or if they'll end up buying stocks. The Fed never bought ETFs before. They never, in the history of a central bank, did they ever buy an ETF. Now they're buying ETFs left and right. It's the craziest bleep I've ever heard. Unbelievable. And you guys tell me, have we hit the recession yet?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Anybody else?
We've definitely already hit 2 quarters.
Okay.
We've been at the recession.
Say it again, Leslie.
I say we've been in the recession.
Yeah, we've seen some things turning down, some economic turning negative. Miku, can you tell me how long you think this slowdown in spending or jobs could last? Give me a time frame for this recession. Are we done? Like, did we win? Are we done? Are we on our way out?
I don't know. I think probably until the summer. And then once the summer starts, because especially in New York, a lot of people, they don't care whether there is coronavirus or not. People are still going to be going outside over the summer. So I
Yeah.
feel
So
like even if it's not over by the summer, people still wouldn't care. They would still go out.
now, yes. Now, what we're confusing now, what some of you guys are confusing is bad economic data with reopening the economy, right? We have had 2 months of poor economic data, all right? We've also had the Fed print a whole lot of money. And we had the Trump and all them send checks to people, right? And the PPP funding for loans. And all
Yes,
that.
we're getting $1,200 more, hopefully.
And yeah, I'm still not going to qualify for that, so I don't even care. This is the downside of working like 3 jobs. When you work 3 jobs and 3 of them are on the books,
You get too much income.
too much income. So I worked too hard to get that check. I think that's kind of unfair, but I digress. Now, yeah, so Tyler said, I don't think a huge spike in unemployment is just poor. Well, let me ask you, Tyler. No, it's not just poor, but is Apple going to go back to making what they were earning? Is Starbucks going to go back to earning how much they were earning? Is Disney going to go back to having the same number of people? J.C. Penney just filed bankruptcy, literally, and then I saw this, which I have to show you because
I believe it was Friday afternoon they filed for bankruptcy.
Friday.
I think it was Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, so they're out. They're gone. And you know what's funny? The Simpsons have always
Again? Oh,
always
saw that.
always
not really.
they always predict the future. There's so
Wait.
many. It's so crazy.
Wait, have the writers or someone like ever like talked about it?
No, so I haven't seen that yet. I wonder if they would. You know what it is? They have so many. There's thousands of episodes, so you're bound to be right sometime. But they predicted Trump winning the election. They predicted J.C. Penney closing. I saw another one the other day where they predicted killer bees.
Oh yeah, the Japanese hornets. I
Like,
believe.
it is out of this world. What
I saw in the comments that they predicted the virus too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they predicted they predicted the virus, then they predicted the vaccine, and then they predicted the bees coming after the vaccine didn't work. It was just, I'm floored at the Simpsons writers. It's so out of control. But the crazy part about it is, do you think the economic data is going to get better or worse?
I think it'll get better. I feel like it'll get better by fall, to be honest, like by the 3rd quarter.
It honestly depends on how fast we open up.
Yeah, but also the vaccine.
Okay. All right.
I honestly think it's gonna take probably at least a year or 2 to actually, not fully recover, but be somewhere where we used
No,
to.
it's definitely going to take a few years to recover,
Yeah.
especially for the travel industry, because they're like the hardest hit out of all this. But like, I think that if we open up in a few years, hopefully William will be wrong and he loses $1,800.
Oh my God. Yo, you're the worst friend in the world. I swear you're the worst friend in the world.
Yeah, it's a running joke on how much of an idiot William is.
Now,
But
I don't want to be negative Nancy over here, but I don't see us getting back to quote unquote normal in terms of revenue in years. Now, going outside, soccer games, dorming in college, all that stuff, I can see you guys getting back to that. Okay, no problem. Pick up games at the park, crowded malls, vacation. I can see that. I'll tell you this. My parents are still going to South Carolina for vacation. I'm not going. Right? They're going to go to the beach. They're going to go to the hotel. They're going to do all this stuff with the rest of the family. I'm not going. Right? So there's certain things. I'm not going to movie theaters anymore. So there's certain things that you're just, it's going to take well over a year for certain things to get back to normal. And that's going to have a long-term impact on the economy. So I get nervous when I say that, when I hear there's a no limit to what Jerome Powell will do, because they are firing bullets off left and right, bazookas and grenades, and they're just firing money at everything. Well, what happens when the economy opens up and nothing goes back to normal? What happens when you open up Starbucks and then Starbucks realizes income is down 60%? We can't keep all these people hired. What happens when Disney reopens and in order to social distance, because you don't have a vaccine until next January or next summer, what happens when they come out and say, yeah, people coming into the parks is down 40%?
Well, the only way to fight bad economic data is to print more money and take out more loans.
that is exactly what I'm saying. So that's exactly what I'm saying here.
I mean, I'm looking at the economy like as the curve, like you're going up here, there's expansion and then there's a contraction. I'm looking at it like that. I feel like right now we're in the recession. I feel like we could start going up by like fall, I feel, but I agree we're never gonna be as high until a few years, because even now this is the highest like we've been like in terms of our expansion period. Like we recovered from 2008. It took how many years to recover from that?
Yeah.
So I feel like it will take some time.
I'm 1,000% on board with you, and I love your rhetoric here, because I think it definitely is interesting, because now we're going to get into, so we already established Jerome said he will do whatever's necessary for the economy. Now let's move over to what we were just talking about. Negative interest rates. Okay. Now, they are currently saying they do not believe we will go to negative interest rates. I believe the exact opposite. I think that we don't need to go negative, but I think we will. I think that Trump is going to push for it. I think that the Republicans are going to push for it. I think that the economic data is not going to be as good as people think, right? Everyone thinks, oh, planes and cruises and Apple stores and consumer purchasing, it's all going to come back at once. And I think it's going to come back slower than people think. Therefore, the economic data is not going to get as good. And since the Fed already used too many weapons, to me, there's only so much money you can throw at it before you put the country in so much debt we can never get out. We're already in way too much. So the next option you have is you force banks to lend money. That's the only thing you have left, is for the Fed to force you to lend. So if you're not willing to print more money, which at some point you just run out of ink and paper, I'd love to know what that printer sounds like. You go to negative rates. I spoke to a few people in the industry. Both of them said they think we are going negative. And one of them, and I quote, the stupidest blanking idea in the world. All right. And he's a lender. He works for a lender. I have another person who gave me a whole big dissertation on why it's a bad idea. But he also believes that it will happen even though they're saying no. So let's get to what are negative interest rates. What is the current monetary policy right now? What are we looking at this very moment?
0% interest rates and a whole bunch of money printing.
Yeah, so the federal funds rate is at 0%. Okay, we've discussed that in class a billion times. Are we all on board with that? Do we all completely grasp? We are currently at 0% the federal funds rate.
Yeah.
So the Fed is lending money to banks or to states, right? So the central bank for the U.S. is lending money in theory to the New York Fed at 0%. Therefore, when they send it, and let's annotate the hell out of this. So central bank lends money to the New York Fed at 0%. The Fed then lends to large commercial banks. And good thing, name 4 large commercial banks. So somebody give me one.
JP Morgan Chase.
Bang. JPM. Give me another one.
Morgan Stanley.
Morgan Stanley. All right. Give me another one. Citi.
Apple Bank.
Apple Bank, yes, not as big. Give me one of the 4 horsemen. You could do Bank of America. BAC, Bank of America. So you're looking at these are probably 3 of the largest. Then you could also add in Goldman Sachs. All right. These are like your horsemen. These are like when you look at banks, these are like, if you were talking tech, these are the Facebook, Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft. These are the big shots that set the policy. They set the tone. They're who you look to. Okay.
They're the whales.
They're the whales. Yes, they're the whales. Good analogy. Now, they lend money to businesses. If this is 0%, what do you think the Fed is going to lend to JP Morgan at? Maybe 0.5%. What will JP Morgan lend to Apple at? And maybe they lend to PayPal. Maybe they lend to, Domino's. What are they going to lend to them at? If it's 0.5% from the New York Fed to JP Morgan, what's JP Morgan going to charge Apple for a loan?
2%.
Okay, I'll go 2%. If Apple is AAA rated and PayPal is triple B plus or double B plus, what do you think PayPal's interest rate is going to be on this loan? They have a lower rate.
3.5.
There you go. So we'll go 3.5%. Domino's is even worse. We'll go 4%. Okay? So this is the current state of the economy. Dylan, does that make sense? This is the current state of monetary policy in terms of interest rates and the federal funds rate. Good. Let's throw a monkey wrench in this whole thing, because I like throwing monkey wrenches. Bank of America is lending to Dylan for college. Okay? Bank of America is lending to Vincent for his business venture with William. Oh boy. Goldman Sachs is lending to Adrian and Leslie because they have this cool business idea and they're going to be super successful. Okay? So now we've got the Fed to New York Fed, for the central bank of the New York Fed to JP Morgan to Apple. New York Fed, Morgan Stanley to PayPal. New York Fed, Citibank to Domino's. The New York Fed to Bank of America to Dylan and Vincent. New York Fed to Goldman Sachs to Adrian and Leslie. So now we're also showing what it's going to look like when you do it to people, right? So we're now going to see how lending works with people. So what is our percentage, do you think, that they're going to lend to Dylan? Still 0% central bank, 0 central bank to the Fed. The Fed goes to Bank of America at, let's go 0.5% across the board. All right, so 0.5% across the board. What are they lending to you at for college?
5%.
Yeah, so Dylan for college is at 5%. Vincent for his business idea is at 11% because it's a business idea and he's not proven. College is very different, right? And then Adrian and Leslie, because they're, now this is whether you guys agree or disagree. If you are a woman or a minority that operates or runs or is starting a business, often now you will get better funding deals than you would have a decade ago because they want to encourage that business growth. So Adrian is a woman and a minority. Leslie is a woman and a minority. So those things would work for you in this situation. And then let's say you would get, if Dylan's getting 5 for college, 11 for Vincent, maybe you're getting 6% for your business.
What?
Does that make sense? So I'm not, now I don't want, we don't have to go into those details on how I came up with that equation because I didn't come up with an equation. I just gave you a random number. But there are certain perks that you can get if you're part of the LGBTQ community, if you're a minority, if you were or weren't born in the United States, if you have a minority as a CEO, if you have a woman on the board of directors. So a lot of business owners, and one of the businesses I'm involved in now, they actually recruit and look for leaders of specific backgrounds in order to be eligible for these perks. All right, whether that's right or wrong or whether it's appropriate or not is not the point. These policies are in place. So we're still going to give Adrian and Leslie a lower percent on their loan. Let's get to negative rates now. So what the hell happens with negative rates? Let's do all of this in green. The central bank reduces this to, it's not green enough. There we go. Negative 0.25%. So what does that mean? What does that mean if the bank is at negative 0.25%?
We would have to get charged in order to store our money at the bank.
Yes. So what's happening is these banks or the New York Fed are losing money in their savings account or their extra cash they have if they don't lend it out. So they're actually being charged 0.25%. How crazy? You guys are with me? Why would they do that? Why would they cut rates so low to negative that they're charging you to have money in the bank? Literally charging you to have money in the bank.
They want to suspend it.
So it wouldn't be really us. Like your savings account isn't going to go negative, right? But JP Morgan, they could charge JP Morgan negative 0.1%. They could charge Morgan Stanley negative 0.75%. What would that convince JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley to do? If they're losing money by having it in their accounts, what would that motivate them to do?
To give it out, to lend it out.
Yeah, get it out of their account, and you used a great word, lend it out. That's exactly what they would do. They would increase the amount of loans they're giving. They would lend it out. All right? They would lend it out. That is huge, that they would lend it out. Okay? So here's how this works with negative rates. It's good for you as future business owners and good for you as college students, because if it's negative 0.25 and negative 0.75, now maybe it's negative 0.2 here for them. You take out your loan, they're still going to give you your loan, but maybe now your loan is at 2%. Maybe this loan to Vincent is at 6%. And maybe this loan to you is at 2.5%. So I doubt it'll get to the consumer like us, that we will have negative rates if we have money in our savings account. Your loan rate would not go negative. Let's just get that out of the way. They are not going to pay you, Dylan, to take out a loan. What they could do, though, is charge banks a negative % for not lending. So banks are going to start lending. Well, what happens if Vincent has a bad credit score and Vincent has a terrible business idea? No offense to Vincent, right? Maybe it's William's fault, right? So they have a terrible idea. And you're the bank at -2%. Are you still going to loan it to Vincent?
Yeah.
Say it again, Vincent.
Probably.
Yeah, why? Why are
They need to get rid of the money somehow.
That's it. They got to get rid of the money. Otherwise, they're going to lose it. So I'd rather lend it to Vincent and William, give them a lower interest rate, even though they are a risky investment. Even though giving it to Vincent is risky, I'd still give him the loan. Because if I don't give him the loan, then what happens? Then
Lose money.
Yes, I owe money on all the cash I have in my account. And bet your butt, hell no, I am not owing cash. So I'm going to lend the hell out of my money. You got that right. So it could be a negative rate. From the central bank to the New York Fed, it could be negative, which promotes the New York Fed to lend to JP Morgan. It can be negative from JP Morgan and the Fed, which then promotes JP Morgan to give loans to businesses. Maybe Apple's loan is 1%, the PayPal loan is 2%, the DMZ loan is 2.5%. And like we said, all these percentages go down. They're not going to pay Apple to take out a loan. That's just ridiculous, right? The really negative rates come from this part of the equation. This is the negative, right? From the central bank to the New York Fed, and from the New York Fed to the major banks. That's where the negative comes in. I highly doubt businesses and people like us will get negative rates. Yeah, so Frank, that's an interesting thought. An interesting thought is, can't commercial banks increase it? Now, in theory, you would want to say yes. But I highly doubt. So here's Frank's argument. Frank's argument is, if the New York Fed is lending to JP Morgan at -1%, can't JP Morgan increase its interest rate to offset this loss? Is that correct? Yes, they can. But let me ask you this. Do you think every single bank is going to do that? If the answer is no, then you're looking at competition, Frank. Competitive pricing for anything, just like a loan. So let's say you're taking out a loan, Frank, and all of you might be taking out loans for college. JP Morgan says, I'll give you a loan at 2%. Morgan Stanley, I'll give you a loan at 4%. Citibank, I'll give you a loan at 1%. Where are you taking your loan? Citibank, duh, 1%. This will create competition by people who want to take out loans from lenders. So if JP Morgan jacks up their interest rate to offset the loss from the New York Fed, people just won't go to JP Morgan. And then JP Morgan loses potential business. Does that answer your question? That's why they won't raise their rates. They'll lose.
Wait, can banks raise their rates anytime?
The short answer to that is yes. There's kind of a range that they're expected to say, like almost like a rubric. Imagine there's a rubric, right? They have flexibility in the grading rubric on how they give you loans. There's a little bit of flexibility there, yes. Are you going to go to JP Morgan? They offer you 40%, and you go to Morgan Stanley, they offer you 2%. No, there's laws against being predatory. And that's what it's called. It's called predatory lending. Okay?
Yeah.
So there's laws against that. But you will get competition, Frank. You'll definitely get competition. Does this piece make sense about the negative rates so far? Because then I just want to talk about one more thing.
Wait, how do banks actually profit then if they're lending out?
Thank you. That's what we were about to get to. So if JP Morgan is lending out at 1%, how the hell do they make money? Why the hell would you buy their stock? Guess what? Rule 1, don't buy their goddamn stock. and I pardon my language, I apologize if anybody's reading it at home or listening, or your parents are listening, or Dr. Marmor listens to this. Don't buy the damn stock. Don't do it. There's just no rationale to do it. They're lending money at such a low percentage, they can't make profit. And if they do, it's definitely not what you want to see as an investor, as much profit as you want them to be earning. So my rule, I don't buy banks. A lot of people do. A lot of people make money. I would love to purchase JP Morgan stock. I'm waiting to do it, but I really think we're going to get negative rates. And if we get negative rates, you do not want them in your portfolio. They are not going to be earning a lot of money. I would rather own a whole lot of other businesses. So how does JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Citibank make money when they're now giving out loans at such a low percentage? Here's how. If you take Adrian and Leslie and you give them a super small loan, and let's say they need it for 10 years, do you think we will be out of this economic crisis within 3 years? Yes or no, guys? Type yes in the chat if you think yes. Will we be out of this crisis in 3 years and back to much more normalcy? Do you think yes? I'll go and I'll say yes. Maybe we're going to have a debt crisis. Bet your butt on that, Vincent. But that's not even what people are concerned about now.
I mean, we're going to always have a debt crisis if we're running on, debt all the time.
That's it. It's debt financing, which is wildly wild.
The world runs on debt.
Yeah, so let me get back to Adrian's question and Adrian Leslie's business and question. How do you make money off Adrian and Leslie if Goldman Sachs is lending to them at such a small percentage? Well, here's what you do. You lock them in now. You lock them in at a super low percent. And then as the economy gets better, you increase their interest rate. Does that make sense? And that's when you start making money. Or if they have a fixed rate, which is really low, then if Adrian and Leslie went to Goldman Sachs for their first loan, where do you think they go for their second loan if they need another loan on their business in 5 or 6 or 10 years? They go back to Goldman Sachs. So they don't make a lot of money up front, but they might retain a client for the future. They could raise your interest rate down the road as the economy recovers. And if you move your business account to Goldman Sachs, they can charge you a monthly fee to operate your business account through them. Does that make sense, Adrian? So it's kind of like Apple. Let's say Apple gave you, instead of a $1,000 phone, a $200 phone, right? Well, now you're locked into the Apple ecosystem. You'll probably use Apple Pay. You'll probably buy some more storage on the iCloud. You'll probably use the App Store a lot. You might end up getting Apple Music. That's Goldman Sachs's hope, is that they give these loans out at such a low percentage, it'll pay off in the long term. That's like the only way they can make money. Does that make sense?
So before the economy starts to get better, they're not making money.
I won't say they're not, but if they used to make this much money, they are now going to make this much money. Imagine they were charging you 6% interest. That's how much money they made off you. Now they're charging you 2%, and that's how much money they make off you. They're probably still making something. Are they making enough to keep all of their employees? Hell no. Are they making enough to keep all of their offices open and not downsize? Probably not. Are they making enough to have a decent enough balance sheet where they can make it through the crisis? Yes.
Okay, so because negative interest rates are actually in place to better the economy, right? Like they wouldn't do that for no reason. So in order for them to profit, they're just really betting on what would happen long term.
Yes. Yeah, that's all they can do. Yeah, because the banks don't create negative interest rates. The central bank does. Jerome Powell creates negative interest rates. they pass the negative interest rate to the New York Fed, or they go directly to the bigger commercial banks. So what happens is now if you're holding money, right? Let's go to this positive interest income means Citibank has $100 billion in cash assets. Well, keeping that money in cash at negative 2.5% is bad. So what do? You get them to lend that money. They were getting positive interest, right? They were getting like 1%. So imagine this, 100 billion times 1%. That's interest income. Interest you earn from like your savings account. Negative interest income means you have 100 billion, and I'm just using big numbers because they're more fun, times negative 0.25. This one means the more you save, the more you make. This one means if you keep it and save it, you will lose money. So you have to spend it and lend it. Does that make sense, Adrian?
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. Now, I think we've got this down. We know commercial banks. Positive interest income is income you get basically from your savings account, where monthly you get your positive interest, right? Then negative interest income, therefore, is not income at all. It's actually where they deduct. So one is net positive and the other one's net negative, where you're losing and gaining. Then we get to number 5, which is going to be very interesting. What other types of rates do negative interest rates have an impact on? So you've got your college loans.
Mortgage rates.
Thank you. So you've got your mortgage. What else do we have? We've got your business loan.
Auto loans.
Okay. Auto loans. What else you got? Is anybody here outside of Adrian? Come on, guys. What other types of loans do you take on? You have your credit card. That's debt. How about bonds? All of these rates would drop. If the central bank goes from 0% to negative 0.5%, all of these loan percentages will also drop. Not negative, right? Not negative, right? Your credit card rates, we're at 0%. And what's the average credit card rate? 17% APR. You'll probably end up with like 11% APR. Because you still want to motivate consumers and businesses to take on debt. You're motivating the commercial banks to lend, and therefore commercial banks lower the rates enough to motivate you to take on more debt. We motivate you to buy a house and take on a mortgage, to start a business, buy a car, go to college, swipe your credit card, and then for businesses to sell bonds, to take on debt. This is a lot of information, guys. This is a whole lot of information. Somebody ask me a question about number 5 or rephrase it for me. Dylan, can you actually rephrase it first? Can you rephrase this piece right here for me for number 5? Can you just, in your words, what does that mean? Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So if the central bank cuts their rate to a negative amount, then you would need to, and the other banks would need to get rid of their money in order to prevent them from losing money because of the negative rate. So they would give out more loans, which can decrease the rate on that loan, and therefore prevent them from losing money.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that? Is there any more information that you guys gathered that you might want to add? Who else is here we haven't heard from? Josh? Zhang? Anybody else want to add?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, what rates doesn't it impact then? Because it pretty much seems like it impacts everything.
Yes, it would impact everything. So it wasn't meant to be a trick question. It was really just to see what other loans are you guys aware of. It will impact every single rate that somebody has, from the credit card to the mortgage to the auto, their business, to their college loan, their credit card loan, to the bonds businesses issue, to your PayPal interest rate that you pay on a purchase, to your interest rate that you get on a credit line, to the interest that you have on, credit card mileage that you get when you fly. It could even impact, no, that's about it. It's about it. Does it impact stocks, Frank? Good question. Does it impact stocks?
Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Especially the banks.
Hold on, let's do this. So, Frank, give me one company that is directly impacted by interest rates. Citibank is impacted. Why? Earn less money, right? PayPal. Earn less money on business debt because they do lend. PayPal is a lender, right? PayPal would earn less money. Well, what else? Apple earns less because they have their Apple credit card. Well, if Apple earns less, Visa earns less, Square earns less, Ford, when they sell you a car, Ford earns less because you're paying less interest. So it does impact quite a few businesses. Goldman Sachs will earn less. And what happens when all these businesses earn less? They got to save money. So when you earn less, what do you start doing to your employees?
You fire them.
You get rid of them. You lay them off. And that's really the gist. So it's very difficult because it's a very tough situation to be in. Would this impact your stock? Yes. With negative interest rates, unless you have a healthy consumer still buying, and if the consumer is still buying, you wouldn't need negative interest rates. Negative interest rates are to promote businesses taking on loans because the economy is slowing. Yeah, guys, go to class. I'll stay on another couple minutes in case there's other questions. We did run a lot longer than I thought. I apologize on that, but this is not easy content after all. Questions on this before I let all of you go? I know some of you guys definitely do have to get the heck out of here. Anybody?
Well, I actually have a question about like what happened with JCPenney.
Yeah, go ahead, JCPenney.
Well, my parents were like talking to me about it afterwards. So how would that affect consumers that may have like debt to JCPenney? Because I know JCPenney gave out credit cards. So how would it affect those consumers?
So that's going to be difficult. That is really going to be difficult for JCPenney debtors. So JCPenney takes on a whole bunch of debt, right? Mm-hmm. So pretend Dylan is JCPenney. Dylan's been operating for oh my God, wait a minute. I got something to show you guys. So I got all excited because I really had no one to talk to about this. And since you're asking that question, I'm excited.
That's how excited you are for.
By the way, I
wait for Fridays.
Say it again.
Who?
I think I lost you guys. What'd you guys say?
Oh, I just said, that's how excited you are for class. Like you wait for us every day to talk to us.
Because I have no one to share this with. You guys have no idea. I don't have. I talked to my cousin who's in banking. I talked to one of my old high school buddies who's an accountant. So I talked to a handful of people. It's a very small number. And when I talked to Laura about it, she looks at me like I'm a complete nerd. Like she thinks I'm such a. I get fascinated at things, and I tell her, and she looks at me like you know when a dog turns their head sideways, and they're like, "What are you talking?"
Yeah.
She like judges me. It's terrible. This is my life, guy. Okay, so you know what's insane? J.C. Penney sold 100-year bonds back in, I believe it was like 1997.
What?
Yeah, crazy. Hold on, let me see if I could find it. They were selling 100-year bonds because J.C. Penney was it. They were like they were the Walmart, the TJ Maxx. They were everything. So they started selling 100-year bonds to raise money. Here's the issue. If you're still holding those 100-year bonds, and again, I'm just trying to rush through. I have a meme, not a meme. I think I actually have it on my phone. Let me see. Give me 10 seconds, guys. I'll pull it up.
By the way, I love Baby Yoda.
Yeah, did you get one? I have my Baby Yoda too.
I don't, but I saw it on your Instagram. I started dying.
Yeah, that's our child. We buckle him up in the back seat.
I started thinking of the photo with Disney's old CEO that you showed us.
Yeah, when he's holding it.
Yeah.
Bob Iger. Okay, so 1997, investors bought $500 million worth of J.C. Penney bonds in 1997. Do you have any idea what those bonds? I'm going to pull it up right now. I just sent it to another group chat of former students that I talk about this with. Here you go. With how quickly tech changes the world, it's hard to have confidence in credit worthiness. So 1997, guys, 23 years later, and this company is bankrupt.
That's
bankrupt. If you bought their $500 million worth of these bonds and you're still holding them, they will not be able to pay you back.
Wow, so that's crazy.
You lose money.
$500 million. That's not including the interest, right? The rate of return.
Right. So you would get your interest, but no way in hell they're gonna find out. They're gonna find your principal.
Wow.
So here's what happens is, J.C. Penney has, and let me just wrap this up for you guys. J.C. Penney has just this much debt, right? If they liquidate all of their stuff, maybe they can pay off 45% of their creditors. The other 55% get nothing. Because you have to liquidate your business. You liquidate all the merchandise and all the inventory. You sell the buildings if they have buildings or property. You sell everything. And then J.C. Penney starts paying off all their debtors. Their personal credit card debt that the company has, loans, bonds, and they start paying it off. As of now, J.C. Penney is so broke, I doubt they'll even be able to pay off 45% of their debt.
Yeah.
There's no way out of this. They're done. And that's why it scares people. That's why Amazon's a good investment, because they can adapt easier than a J.C. Penney.
Yeah.
Right? And then you look at a company like, how many guys have ever been to TJ Maxx? TJ Maxx's business model is actually really smart. Have you guys been to TJ Maxx or Home Goods?
Yeah, I have.
What do you do when you go there?
You go and look at discounts, like clothing and everything that's on a good
Straight to the sales section.
Straight to the sales section. But it's almost like, what is it when you look for something? It's like an Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, it's must be.
You look for this cool thing that somehow made it on the rack.
Mm-hmm. Like thrifting, almost.
Yeah, so when you go to TJ Maxx, if you go to J.C. Penney, you're like, oh yeah, we have to go buy this specifically.
Yeah.
But when you go to TJ Maxx, I hate to say it like this, it's almost like an experience. What do you think we'll find today?
Yeah.
So TJ Maxx's business model is even different than J.C. Penney or Dick's Sporting Goods, because you know what's at those stores. When you go to Home Goods, I've been to Home Goods and I walked out with a table. I was like, I didn't need a table. Why the hell did I buy a table? It was there. It's just, it's on sale. It's unique. So you have the opportunity to get it. Dollar General and Dollar Tree. Exactly. You know, you go there, you don't know what you're going to find. You don't know what's on sale. And then it's so low price, you load up. So they're very different business models. Macy's should be the next to file bankruptcy.
Yeah.
You know, Dick's Sporting Goods would be next. Walmart won't. They're so large and they're expanding so much.
Yeah, they're always like active buying new things, like acquisitions and stuff.
Well, Walmart's also now doing dentistry. In Walmart, they're allowing you to see the dentist.
See, they're crazy. They do everything. Like, they're so active still.
They're trying to make sure that they don't become JCPenney.
Yeah.
Smart. Hella smart. Hella smart. Super smart.
Everything.
Okay, so we're still actually going to be talking negative interest rates tomorrow. You guys have the foundation I want. I'll post this video. Tomorrow's negative interest rates little mini assignment is already up. It's more about negative interest rates in the world, on how businesses will act. And we already kind of addressed quite a bit of it. We've already addressed quite a bit of it. So it should be quite easier. But the three pieces are: imagine you operate a commercial bank, imagine you're a business, and then in general, a few thoughts. We discussed all of this, but a lot of it was me discussing it and some students like you guys, you know, chiming in. Now I want to see what your write-up is going to be. Okay? So that'll be tomorrow. I'll give you guys about 10 minutes tomorrow. And same situation, we'll take like 20 or 30 or 35 or, you know, an hour like, you know, 4 of us did, and then continue going on about it if you guys want to talk about it. But just so you know, the Fed and Jerome Powell are saying we are not doing negative rates. Trump is beating the table and telling them he wants negative rates. And I am in the camp, along with a few other professionals, who think we should not do this, but we will by the fall or winter. When the economic data doesn't get back to where we want it, that will be their next resort instead of printing money. And we'll see what happens then. You guys can text me in like November and be like, yo, Ms. Powers, you were right. That's crazy.
I think so. I think that's gonna happen. Even since the beginning, I remember in the first like coronavirus like press holdings, like Trump would be demanding. He would just not even, I don't want to say threaten Jerome, but he would put pressure on him to do it. And they did. They lowered it to 0.
Yeah, it's you know, life is interesting. It happens fast, and change happens fast. I mean, look at the stock market today. The stock market is up huge right now, 3%. Hold on, let's reload this page. 2.83. Tomorrow morning, the market could be down 2%. You know, all it takes is another trade war comment with China to turn things upside down. So just because they say no negative interest rates now does not mean by October they say, well, the data changed, so our opinion changed. All right. Let's pick this up tomorrow. Okay. I'll post this video briefly, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay, bye, Power.
Have a good day, guys. Good job today. Thanks for coming in.